We turned away, walked down an old dilapidated hallway, and through a door at the end. The door opened into the middle of a bustling open-air market. Jack walked up to a vendor and came back with 2 glasses of iced tea. He handed me one. I figured you might need something to drink. Yes, thank you. I am thirsty. We sat down at a small table in the square. Jack looked at me and said, Jeff, do you know where we are? No. I don't. He stood up and spread his arms. Welcome to Israel. Welcome to the old city of Jerusalem. It's now the capital of the world. Do you remember anything about God's promise to Israel? Yes, I remember. Did you say the capital of the world? How's that possible? What year is this? How long was I at the cabin? What about my family, my children? Are they alive? Can I see them? Don't freak out, Jeff. Everything is going to be fine. Everyone is safe, and in time you will see that for yourself. Just be patient, my friend. It's the beginning, not the end of the world. I can't tell you much more than that right now. Why? Because you need to follow the path, this path, God has set before you. You need to follow in faith, and it will lead you to wonderful things. So, it's important you trust Him along the way. I always have. Good. That's all anyone can do. Do you recall thousands of years ago, God dispersed the Jewish people throughout the world, as He said He would do? God made another promise to bring them back to the land, this land. Remember, in 1948, God fulfilled that promise as the nation of Israel was born in one day. Yes, I'm aware of all that. Well, some 70+ years after the birth of Israel, sorry I can't tell you the exact date, a man by the name of Smith took control of the entire world. One thing Smith did concerns you, so that's why I'm telling you all this. While he was in power, he created a program intended to boost the world's population. It turns out his reign was the beginning of the end of evil in this world, and instead of boosting the world's population like he intended, 2/3 of the human race died. He explained all about Israel and the wars, the famines, the pandemics, the death, all in stressful detail. He explained how Smith turned his attention to Israel, and tried to wipe them off the face of the earth, and failed. It seems like we sat for hours. I already knew most of it, but it was still in the future for me. That's what I thought, anyway. He stared at me for a moment. Okay, Jeff, I can see you are getting bored. I didn't know what he was talking about. I was totally fascinated. I heard a child cry behind me, and I turned to look. As I turned back, I was back sitting in the small library at the desk. Jack was gone, as was the table, and the city. I looked down to see that the notebook was still open in front of me. The next thing I read was, Jeff. You can be a real pain sometimes. Oh, okay. Thanks a lot, Jack. I didn't know where that came from. Although confused, I was compelled to read. Despite the efforts of Jerusalem to fix the world, there were still over 3 billion mortals left upon the earth after the war to end all wars, the Great War. Everyone just survived the worst 7 years in human history. The late Mr. Smith implemented a plan, at the beginning of the tribulation, encouraging couples around the world to have large families. He intended to indoctrinate the children into being his devotees while they were still young. Couples who did so received government benefits such as homes and supplemental incomes. Mr. Smith provided a compelling incentive for couples to have many children, and many did. Because of Smith's popular program to grow his own disciples, 500 million participants were still alive at the end of the Great War, the beginning of the millennium, including 84 million orphan children under the age of 7. In addition, problems still plagued the world, at the beginning of the rule of Christ. No one was going to snap their fingers and fix everything. It would take time and effort. For that purpose, Jerusalem set processes in motion to restore the earth, directed by immortals. Immortals were those humans who were real followers of Christ, who either died or were raptured before the tribulation, and returned with Christ to rule with him on the earth. Although most of the immortals involved themselves with issues that plagued the earth and its inhabitants, there was a group of 42 immortals, called Watchers. who volunteered to help with the orphan children. You, Mr. Flake, and 41 other watchers took jurisdiction of this program. The program required more than just leadership, it demanded real devotion of each watcher to care for these children, young children who endured years of hardship, and now were living on the streets, fending for themselves. I stopped reading to think about how, through my dreams, Sierra was the desire of my heart. In my daydreams, I offered this idea, hoping God might consider it. In my dream, God fulfilled the promise while resolving a dilemma. I mused over that for a while. Then I went back outside, taking the notebook with me. As soon as I walked out the front door, I was standing in a landfill. The odor of musty dirt and old rotting garbage forced me to plug my nose. Hundreds of people were walking among the refuse, sifting, picking stuff out of the dirt. I watched as they put the garbage to their mouths as if to taste. I shouted, "Oh, man! They are only children." I turned to Jack, who was standing next to me. "Well, nice to see you again. Where are we?" "Bangladesh. We're in Bangladesh. Because of Smith's plan, this became the fate of many children throughout the world, including America." I looked away, and we were in a different landfill. 3 little girls were combing through the garbage next to us, speaking English. The older child kneeled, looked up at her sisters, and said, "I found some crackers." The 2 younger girls put their tiny hands out, hoping to get a cracker. I could see the girls were starving, moving little starving bodies, looking as if wearing Halloween costumes. Each eating nasty little crackers along with the dirt picked out of the filth. The older girl looked up at me. She smiled as I reached for them. Too late, I was back on the front porch of the log cabin. I stood in place as what I just saw deeply saddened me. I wanted to bring them with me. How could such a thing happen? I could not understand. I truly hated Smith. Afterward, I walked over to the lake where 2 hammocks hung between 2 trees, next to the lake and the trail. I got into one, laid down, and continued to read. In the first year of the millennium, the military built orphanages for most of the destitute children born during the tribulation. 9 billion people were living on the earth before the tribulation. At the end of 7 years, 2/3, or 6 billion of the earth's population died through conflict, famine, murder, pestilence and many other horrible tragedies. No sooner did I finish reading that a deep sorrow came over me, such a sense of profound sadness, it wrinkled my face. Tears formed in my eyes as I thought of family and friends who might die or have died during the Great Tribulation. It was soul sadness, and nothing less than disturbing. I returned to reading. It left these orphaned children with no family, or living in countries where their relatives were so poor, they could not or refused to care for them. Understand the gravity of death the world faced, leaving 84 million young orphaned children. The 42 watchers, including you, accepted the responsibility of caring for and placing in homes 2 million orphans each. When I thought of the other 41 people who embraced the same longing as I did, I became excited. I continued reading. In time, hundreds of watchers got involved with the program. Pausing, I meditated on what I was reading, and what an enormous undertaking. I continued. Innocent children, orphaned by the ravages of starvation, sickness, and conflict, needed our help. We needed to care for them. It was an overwhelming job feeding and housing these children with the resources available in the world at the time. Next thing, I was standing in a small living room. Jack was lying on a couch, eating fig Newtons while looking at me. He was out of place. Yet no one noticed. 2 young people were standing, crying as 2 angels stood beside them with their arms around their shoulders. I could see the tears of joy running down their faces as the couple said, "Yes." How do we proceed? I looked at Jack, and then a chair behind me. When I sat, I fell instead. I was back at the lake lying on the ground next to the hammock. I let out a moan as I climbed back in. I read on. So, a plan to save the orphan children went into action. The first part of the plan was to select certain married couples who didn't have children of their own. After being selected, each pair adopted at least 4 orphan children. 1/4 of the children had over 4 siblings. So, a family might include up to 8 children, but the average ended up being 4 per family. No children were to be separated from their siblings. It was a daunting task to find the right parents. So, Jerusalem sent an army of angels, with instructions to hand-pick 110 million couples from all over the world to become parents to these kids. The criteria for selecting the parents was they needed to love the children as their own. Somehow, the angels were fantastic at choosing the right ones. That process took 2 years to complete. It was a lot to ask of the new parents who needed to consider taking on so many children and embrace the responsibility of creating an instant family. Fortunately, there was an abundance of couples eager to get involved. Before we completed the second part of the plan, we told every couple there was another caveat. The new parents not only needed to accept responsibility for the children, but they also had to prepare for a mass exodus. At first, no one told them about leaving the earth. They only told the couples they would need to move to a remote location. Such a move became the hard part for many. 1 out of 10 backed out for fear of being so far away from other family members. Although reluctant, the majority agreed to the move, which was why 110 million couples were chosen in the first place. Selecting so many allowed some to change their mind because of the move or other pertinent reasons. Then it was revealed to the rest, once the children were placed, they would move from off the Earth onto habitable planets in various regions of space. Once informed of that, most became excited, with only 100 couples backing out. No child was removed from their new family even though some remained on the Earth. Meanwhile, Jerusalem promised to ease any anxieties, assuring everyone it would work out. I stopped reading. Perhaps, when I'm done reading this book, an orderly will bring me from out of my room at the asylum to feed me breakfast with orange juice. I suspected Jack must be one of the other patients. We've spent too much time playing cards and telling wild stories in the middle of the night. Now, we're sharing the same hallucination. I wonder if any of the kids will stop in and visit me today. Such irony, I laughed at myself. I continued reading. These new families needed to move away from their home, their country, and onto another planet. The plan was necessary for the families and the future. In the future, man will leave the Earth to follow others who were already established out in the reaches of space. God's kingdom includes more than just the Earth. After convincing each couple, and persuading them everything will be all right, we enacted the next part of the plan. Because it was such an elaborate plan, Jerusalem engaged the help of many top-level government officials, including several high-ranking military personnel. Military officials with the highest levels of security became involved. It was a secret plan, and we wanted to keep it that way. Once couples joined the program, and children were integrated, we called them the families or citizens. Each husband joined the military so they could move around without suspicion. There were no wars to fight. The world was under a single government. The militaries came under one commander in Jerusalem. Already, the world's military was busy rebuilding nations. Because its leaders were competent and organized, and its accomplishments included getting the job done, that organization proved capable of facilitating this extreme plan. Also, the military has always been extraordinary at keeping secrets. The families often received reassignment orders to move them around. Reassignments worked well to keep them from becoming too involved in their communities, which helped to keep questions from an inquisitive public to a minimum. After a time, to relieve the tensions of moving from place to place, Jerusalem built neighborhoods so the families could interact among themselves without concerns of breaking their silence. It took 5 long years to acclimate these families into a regular routine. All the while, the messengers, along with military personnel, secretly built airstrips around the world for an organized exodus from the Earth. They used these airstrips to fly the families to a secret spaceport in South America. From there, ships took them from the Earth to various destinations in the stars. I questioned myself how I already knew these things. This notebook was describing what I already dreamed, and my ideas concerning the beginning of Sierra, my heaven. I continued reading. One day, families received orders which included dates for their departure. When their time came, Each family told their relatives they received orders to move out of the country. Then, the families proceeded to the various airstrips to board aircraft bound for the spaceport. 400,000 citizens left the Earth every day during the night. The exodus took another 2 years. I thought of the spaceport. Next thing I knew, I was standing in a large modern airport. Thousands of children with parents were roaming around the port and heading in a central direction. I bumped into a group of young kids who looked at me while I said "Excuse me." I absorbed the excitement on their faces and the adults with them. Everyone was excited, me too. I saw Leviathan crafts resembling huge bulky buildings in the center of a parking lot, with fences around them. Each gate in the fence displayed a sign above it. The signs showed the names of the destinations in space where the families were going. The crafts were shaped like Christmas ornaments or pumpkins with pointy tops. Each craft held 5,000 passengers. I saw windows lined in straight, neat rows down and across each craft. Every window showed the face of a child or an adult. The outer hull of each craft sparkled like glitter all over its surface. Men, women, and children were walking through the gates. When inside, several attendants ushered the families on board the crafts. Once a ship reached capacity, the gates were closed, and they allowed no one else to enter. Everyone inside the gate continued to enter the crafts. After everyone was inside, the doors shut, and it flashed as it lifted from the ground. With another bluish flash, it disappeared into the sky. I thought how exciting it was to experience the liftoff, the sensation of the ship leaving the ground. I saw Jack standing 10 feet away from me. He looked at me and shrugged his shoulders. I looked back at the fence. Another craft was already taking the place of the previous one. The gates reopened, and another group of travelers entered the gates. I was ecstatic to be here. I turned to walk toward Jack and almost fell out of the hammock again. Hammocks are hard enough to keep from falling out without being helped. I shook my head. I lay there for some time dreaming again of the spaceport, those remarkable ships. One can only imagine what each family faced when moving on to the first home planets in the different regions of space. I continued reading. Once the families reached their destination, they spent 2 months on gigantic space stations circling the home planet. The space stations were constructed like luxury hotels, with long hallways offering restaurants, grocery shops, and other essentials needed to live in comfort. Also, they provided a magnificent view of their home planet. Each station connected one to another, end to end, forming a ring. Once connected, it was one colossal facility. Small trolleys traveled around the whole ring, going in both directions. It took several weeks to travel around the whole structure if you rode the trolley full circle. The edifice itself when assembled reminded me of the rings of Saturn. These stations provided a place for each family to live while selecting a house, furniture, and other necessary items to live on the home planet. After arriving, each family made appointments with Sierra personnel to go over details, including a trip or trips to the planet to pick out housing, which suited them. Many selected plans which included an empty lot to build a home. Once a family selected a property, a group of angels with companions built the house of their choosing, with landscaping. It only took 2 days for the angels and companions to construct a dwelling. When accommodations were complete, the families moved on to the planet. I spent the next hour imagining the entire process. How exciting! With my enthusiasm growing, I read again. The angels, along with the companions, spent 7 years in each region before the Exodus, building schools, public facilities for the living and education of the citizens. The angels and companions also built farms, factories, stores, shopping malls, and other entities the families needed to survive. It was a ready-made society that satisfied all their needs until they could fend for themselves. It would take time before citizens could function in their new habitat. Understanding Sierra was my dream, and knowing millions of other redeemed people might have different ambitions and dreams, everyone as important as mine. I concluded there are no limitations in how we might live in God's kingdom, only our own imagination. I went to read again, but the book changed languages and I could no longer read it.